sharing this information with those that couldn't make it tonight. So you're being recorded, or I'm being recorded actually. And I would request that all attendees enter, when a question goes into the chat room, if you will allow only the 33rd District people to reply, that will be really helpful. Additionally, we will be monitoring, or my co-host will be monitoring our chat room, and we will attempt to get to all the questions when we take breaks for questions. Should questions not get answered, we'll prepare a frequently asked questions, or questions asked we didn't have time to respond to, and those will be posted on our website soon. Don't look for them this week, maybe next week. So let's get started with advanced training. There is a participants button down below, and can you go to that and just let us know who was on our beginning financial training last night? Excellent. Great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. We didn't scare you away, so I'm glad. Thank you. Okay, let me get the share screen going. She says very confidently. I do want to let you know that there was an opportunity in one email that I think it came attached to this invitation to join, to be able to print the PowerPoint. I did have to change up a few slides today. We will be posting what you're seeing tonight on the website. So here is the contact information. We failed to enter on this slide Flora's information. So maybe Flora could type that in the chat. She is PTA 33RD auditor@gmail.com. Okay, so I want to welcome everybody. Giving up your Wednesday afternoon in the summer is very appreciative. I appreciate everybody trying to better themselves. I mean, I learn something new all the time. This is Cindy's logo for her term, The Perfect Fit. We dream, we believe, we achieve, all in PTA. So let's see how I see my full screen. Lisa, you had this problem last night. Well, it doesn't matter. I'll do my best. So on our budget guidelines, again, we reviewed it last night, but budgets need to be remembered that they are a guideline. They're a best estimate of what you anticipate your year to look like. They are a living document. They can be changed or amended anytime throughout the year, but it gets approved by the executive board and it gets ratified and approved by the association. You should always make sure that any changes to your budget are balanced. So if you've decided, well, we need to increase our expenses, everybody needs to understand that you either need to bring in more revenue, or you already have excess funds that are going to offset that additional expense. And it does have a lot of historical value. So if by chance you've overspent in one line item, it's okay to show that those one-time expenses are overspent. But you don't want to totally overspend. You are not authorized to overspend your budget throughout all of your line items. Okay. Memberships. Please remember that as your units collect memberships, those memberships need to get moved on up through the channels to your council, to your district, state, to your district, to your council. Then those councils send on to the district, district sends to state, and state ultimately to national. We are a national organization. Sometimes I think When we are in our units, we tend to think of our units as just our little PTA, but we are really a piece of a larger group. You want to encourage units that on their budget to break out their income of what's their unit dues portion versus what are the amounts that you're going to be sending up through channels, and try to keep those separate. I think it makes for easier accounting later. You also want to make sure your memberships are properly recorded, because your auditor is going to be checking them on the unit checklist. And you want to review those with your councils periodically to make sure what you say you've collected for membership is what your council is collecting. And if you're using Totem or any other electronic membership, you want to make sure you keep that as a separate line item on your budget. Also, additionally, making sure you separate Totem memberships from any donations that come in. Pay attention to membership contest deadlines. Those are fairly strict, especially when we know we have to get our memberships up to be recorded at state. They're very strict with us. Therefore, district has to set a very strict schedule and back down into the council. And try to remit monthly, even though you may only have one. I think it's good to stay, square in your reporting. Don't, save them up. So here on the audit checklist is a snapshot of where the auditor verifies what did the unit collect, what did the unit pay out. Okay, what's new? E-commerce accounts and electronic banking are fairly new. Some units and councils are becoming quite sophisticated, so you probably know a lot more about it than I do, but CAPTA has given us some guidelines on how we can handle payment via electronic funds and transfer your bill pay services online payment. This is a piece right out of the toolkit. Checking my notes. Lisa has posted in the chat where you can find forms. We're going to refer to several forms in this presentation, and that is a place you can go to at capta.org to find some of the forms that you might be wanting to utilize. So here's, just like with checks, all electronic fund transfers should be done, income especially, in a separate account, whether it's for your Totem membership. It is recommended that you have an account separate from your checking account. But if you're going to be using a bill pay service, CAPTA is not requiring, but suggesting that you keep a separate account. And then you would transfer monies from your checking account into these bill pay service accounts or into these income accounts to collect your memberships, etc. You need to have an authorization to transfer funds. You can't just allow the treasurer to move these accounts. Those have to be documented in minutes that monies are moving from income account, e-commerce account to checking account, or from checking account to the bill pay service and then out. Those accounts also get audited. This is an authorization for payment that is on the CAPTA website for your bill pay services or your electronic funds transfer. What is important is that, again, PTA is all about transparency. So you want to discuss as a board what it's going to cost you to have an e-commerce account. You want to review all the bank fees, any limits on the number of transfers that might happen with your bank. Separate audit is required on all these accounts. As we discussed, the authorization of transfer form is required, and a motion is needed to approve the transfer of funds. It is made at an executive board meeting or an association meeting before the money is transferred.
Lena?
Yes.
Someone had a question. I think we need to clarify what is defined as bill pay? Is that PayPal? Do we need a separate checking account?
That would be there. CAPTA is suggesting a separate account be established. Flora, is that something that can be done in a savings with the, say, the bank?
The bill pay is with your bank, and they do it, through banking transactions. A PayPal is a separate payment processor, and that money goes into that money could go into an e-commerce account. You just draw down the money and post it to the e-commerce account. But I think bill pay is when you go into your checking account and they have it set up where you can pay your bills online, but you never pay any bills off PayPal.
Thank you. Okay. So there's e-commerce. And this is a form that you can use to transfer monies between accounts. Again, a motion needs to be made in executive board or the association meeting. It's documented, it is signed, and then the transfer can occur. If your board wants to allow electronic check deposits, again, a separate bank account needs to be established. You can have one e-commerce account. Is that correct, Flora?
You can have as many accounts as the association may approve, but ordinarily it's just one e-commerce account for Square, PayPal, Totem, all of those.
Okay. So you want to set policies on your board. First, you want to check with the bank what their policies are. Then you want to set policies on your board about how long you're going to hold on to these checks until they're destroyed. You know that the banks all want you to write on your electronic deposits, electronically deposited and the date on the face of the check, so it can't be reused, like presented at a bank for payment. You want to vote on which financial officers have access to the electronic deposit feature. Their CAPTA is suggesting they must be a signer on the board. I'm sorry, on the bank account. And I think that should do it for that. What I want to remind everyone is that these electronic funds transfers or bill pays are on top of a normally processed check request or payment authorization. So those have to occur first, where the treasurer receives the, I advanced this too far, Flora, where the treasurer is going to receive the original bank, the original bill, invoices, receipts for reimbursement, etc., the originals. During our COVID stay-at-home policy, you're going to want to create or have someone create for you a fillable PDF form of the check request or the payment authorization, your electronic funds transfer, so that you can send those to the president for approval. They can be sent to the recording secretary for approval. Those are the signers that authorize these transactions to occur. Once a meeting occurs, minutes are recorded, then you get those approvals. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. People ask about how we're dealing with COVID and the COVID procedures. So these last few things slides that we talked about, those can be done, but you still want to make sure you're going through the other original steps of making sure you're getting adequate support for the disbursement. Okay, we're early. I'm replying to, looking at what questions do we have that we have not addressed yet, Lisa and Flora?
I tried to answer them as they've come in. I don't
Okay.
think there are any unanswered unless I'm
All right.
missed them.
There's one that said, would electronic check deposits be more helpful during the COVID experience?
You know, it's a personal decision. The board needs to allow it. It is for checks only. All cash still has to go to the bank. I don't know what units have in mind as to, you know, fundraisers they may be doing that will require someone to receive cash, but those could come up. So the board needs to decide what, well, let me stay with the cash first. So you still have to process cash in a normal way with cash verifications. You probably are going to need to do the cash verification with 2 people. Maybe it's sitting at a park bench or whatever, you know, in open air, that type of thing. And then when it is transferred to the person depositing, that could be your treasurer or it could be your financial secretary if that's what your bylaws have. That person still needs to go to the bank. We talked a little bit about it last night about making sure if it's large amounts of cash, you can call for you can go to the police watch commander for assistance in transporting that money. At this point, I can't see anything happening like that in a unit, but it could happen. Electronic check deposits can be made. Again, you just need to have your policy and set forth when you're going to destroy your checks, etc.
Lena, I just wanted to, there's some question come up and I just wanted to make sure. The e-commerce account, the separate account, it's a recommendation from the PTA. It's not required, but it's a recommendation because you have payment processors going, you know, having your banking information. And I've seen where, you know, money was taken out, you know, that wasn't authorized. So it's not required, but it's a recommendation to have a separate account for your e-commerce transactions.
Thank you.
And I think to clarify, there may be the impression that you need a separate one for PayPal and Totem and like each type, but I'm thinking you can have one for all of those, right?
Right,
Yes.
your e-commerce transactions, any of those, Square, Totem, PayPal.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we can move ahead, Flora, to the audit.
Oh, okay, hi. So I'm going to talk, my name is Flora Farzad. I'm the 33rd District Auditor. And on the slide, I'm going to skip the checklist for a minute until we get to it. Let me take out the chat that I have in the middle there. Okay, so the next bullet item is review government filings. It is not the auditor's job to necessarily review the filings, but just make sure that they're filed. They're not expected to look at the integrity of the data on the return. They're just making sure that they're filed, and it's usually the year before. Okay. I'm going to go pretty quickly because we have our auditing training tomorrow night. So this is just going to be a preview of coming attractions for tomorrow night that I'm hoping that you will sign up for. I think it's very important that treasurers attend audit trainings and vice versa. Auditors should really attend treasurer trainings just to have that connection and know what each other's doing. Anyway, the third bullet, look to see, okay, the previous audit's ending balance should be the same as your current audit's beginning balance. Obviously, ending balance, beginning balance, nothing should have happened in that nanosecond between the previous audit and the current audit. An audit report is required for each bank account. I think we were just talking about that there should be an audit report for each one. On the audit report itself, they've changed it from bank account number to bank account name. So you can say checking one, savings one, PayPal, or whatever. In between there, we should have the presentation of the audit, and we'll cover that tomorrow night of how the audit is presented to the president, treasurer, board, association. And then a copy ultimately Oh,
Sorry.
okay. No, a copy will ultimately go to the recording secretary, president, treasurer, and then the council will require your audit if you're a unit. And if you're a council, the district will require your audit. I think I get all of them, actually, units and councils.
Yeah, the
But
councils are sending them, but we want the units to
yeah,
go to the council. Then the
yeah,
council collects them and sends them on to the district.
yeah, it's just a like little chain. Okay, and this is the new audit report. And you'll see that we have to report memberships where we didn't have to do that before necessarily. Also, the audit report, the first part of the report is just your 6 months. If your audit period is 6 months, that's your 6 months of your treasurer reports. That should equal the last month of your bank reconciliation. So let's say the audit is June 30th, then the bank reconciliation should be your June 30th bank reconciliation, and those amounts should equal. At the bottom, oops.
Sorry. I'll wait for you to say next slide.
I'm sorry, you know. So at the bottom, what is new is a review committee, and you can check on page 26 of your insurance guide. There is a requirement that if the auditor is not a qualified accountant, then a review committee must sign off on the audit. And qualified means that you have training or you're a CPA or have worked in the accounting field with some kind of specialty, probably in auditing. Public sector would be the best. The audit committee, if you need an audit committee, it needs to be at least 2 people, of which one may be the auditor. And any audit committee members must be put forth or nominated by the board and approved by the association. Ordinarily, the president will nominate, but the president is a check signer, so they cannot nominate an auditor or a review committee. Okay.
Ready?
I am. Oh, there's the checklist.
Yay.
Okay. The checklist is your friend, even for treasurers. The top of the checklist shows the items that you're giving to the auditor. I would say to you, make a list of what you're giving to the auditor, and I say the same thing to the auditor. We don't want a problem later where I thought I gave that to you, no you didn't. That's the first thing I would have you and the auditor exchange, is that you're accepting what's being handed over. So there's not a question of anything being lost. The last part of the audit checklist, and I think treasurers would love this. This is like, didn't you love that school teacher that gave you the exam before the test was given? This is your test. And this is exactly stating what needs to be done or what the auditor will look at based upon all the training that you're getting with regard to project authorizations, check authorizations, cash verification forms, minutes. These are all the questions that they're going to look at. So, hey, why not you look at it first, get your things in order, make sure everything is done. And the audit is not just twice a year. It could be every month. You want to assemble your items, maybe look at this checklist, make sure everything is correct, put it in your binder under July, and have that ready. So there's not like, you know, a rush to get things for the audit ready. You can already have it, okay? And theoretically, if you do this, 9 out of 10 times the audit findings should not be a surprise, because you're already on top of it by looking at this audit checklist. And this is in the forms on the CAPTA website. Okay. Okay, next one. Choosing the audit report check. Okay, so there's a grading on your test that the auditor will give. This is the auditor's opinion based upon documentation that was received or not received. So if the audit is correct, it means the audit balances. Minimal corrections. This is a judgment call. Maybe you missed a signature. The important thing is that procedures were followed. So I talk a lot about the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. The letter of the law is everything has to be signed. The spirit of the law is that procedures are being followed. It was a human error, and there's no risk to PTA assets at all. Reports are filed monthly, treasury reports, bank reconciliations. Also on page 26 of your insurance guide is the requirement that bank reconciliations be be prepared and approved by a separate board member not on the financial team or not related to the treasurer or whatever. So we need to get the bank reconciliations approved separately. And then the minutes show all or most of the recommended financial motions. So you have, they give you the minutes and you can trace the release of funds and the approval of the budget and whatnot. Substantially correct. The auditor still balances, but there are missing documentation and maybe missing signatures. It should not be chronic. It should be more of an exceptional basis because you'll need all this information, or the auditor will need all this information to see that the audit balances. So there might be some missing cash verification forms, but for the most part, it's substantially correct. It can be moved forward.
Oh,
Next
sorry.
one.
Oh, ready? Okay.
Oh, partially
wait.
correct.
Let me partially correct. Sorry.
Partially correct. I wouldn't say that you can say the audit is balanced because there's so much documentation missing and procedures were not followed. So if there is an audit which the auditor cannot follow or verify the balances, then, but for the most part, they can see some documentation. So it's partially correct, but it should really be done again and more documentation submitted. And the last one is just plain incorrect. It's not balanced. There's no, procedures are not followed, and there's a risk of mismanagement. Okay. Did you want me to do this one? Or are you
Sure.
going to do this one?
Actually, can I jump in with a
yeah.
couple of
Yes.
things? I did post in the chat the usual periods for audits, but maybe you want to also mention about
okay.
changing
Sure.
signers, and you would have to audit then.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. So the audits are done in accordance with your bylaws, and this is usually twice a year as of December 31st. So it'd be July 1st through December 31st, and then January 1st through June 30th. An audit is also required if there's a change in a check signer or a financial person left or the president left. It's good to have an audit. This is to protect the officers and to make sure that everything is in order when things are passed on to a new person. So, yeah.
And then also I wanted to maybe ask why the audit review committee is now a thing.
On page 26 of your insurance guide, the fidelity bond, and I have it right here. It says a fidelity bond is a commercial crime, and in order for the fidelity bond coverage to apply to your organization, you must comply with the following requirement. Your organization must conduct an annual audit review of the books by an audit or review committee or qualified accountant. And the other one is the signature of the reviewer of the bank reconciliation. Coverage may be voided if the above requirements or conditions are not followed. So we need a review committee. They did not specify the scope of work of the review committee. So it can be as little as verifying beginning and ending balances and looking at findings and recommendations. They do not need to do the audit over again. It's done by the auditor and they are just reviewing it, and it could be as simple as what I just said. So.
One thing to remember, everyone, is that I think we discussed this last night as well, but as Flora just mentioned, it is a requirement of the insurance company that a non-check signer review the bank statements every month. Review them, sign them off that they've looked at them. 2 signatures appears to be on every check. There's not some bizarre withdrawal, checks made payable to cash, checks made payable to the president and signed by the president, that type of thing. So they are, will question if ever there's a claim, is your bank's account being reviewed monthly by having the non-check signer review the bank statement. Go ahead.
And the audit committee, there was a question. The audit committee can be the auditor and one other person that is nominated by the board and approved by the association. I was told the other day, and it's interesting, you may want to have 3 on your review committee in case there's a tie, tiebreaker. But
So this slide, the purpose of this slide is to remind everybody that, especially at this time of the year, June 30th, your audit report is completed first. Then, once we have agreed, the treasurer and the auditor have agreed what's your ending bank balance, then the treasurer prepares the annual financial report. At 33rd District, we have created a form, we call it the Unit Treasurer's Annual Report. Those ending balances must be the same. And then once those are done, then you're now ready for your governmental filings, but not before. So the audit starts the process, closing up the books. Then that unit treasurer's annual report is done, and then then you're ready to do your governmental filings.
yeah, I think it's important. I'm sorry, Lena, but I think it's important to know it is all the same data. It is all the same information. It's just put on different formats in different reports. So that's why it should be the same. It should equal because it's the same information.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So the treasurer's annual report is required of every unit and council. It helps to prepare and organize your books for your tax filings. It is the duty of the outgoing treasurer, but it could be done by the incoming treasurer or any other member of the executive board. On the rare case that we have a treasurer that, says, oh, okay, I'm done, I'm bye, here you go. That does occur. So know that if you're a new board and the outgoing treasurer hasn't wrapped up the books, then somebody or a group needs to step in and get that done. This is one of those questions of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, or the cart or the horse. But so we've been talking a lot about what is required of a treasurer, and check authorizations and payment authorizations and bank statements, etc. But the purpose of PTA is to be as transparent about their money as possible. And the way you're going to do that, instead of just keeping all your entries in a checkbook, is you prepare a ledger. And you want to organize your ledger to match the categories on the annual report as best as possible. There are treasurer's books that you can purchase either from 33rd District or from California State PTA. You can create your own spreadsheet electronically, or you can use a system like My PTEZ as your ledger. If you use a software program like, let's say, Excel or Quicken, I guess Quicken is the better one, is that needs to be a system the PTA purchases so that you can move that program from treasurer to treasurer for the historical purposes of your PTA, but also if you're using a system like that, you need to make sure you've got hard copies. And in past years, they've always wanted those bound, just like your minutes. If you're using a system like My PTEZ, that is a company that CAPTA uses, and they're I'm not quite certain what their agreement is, but your documents are stored in that system for perpetuity of PTA, My PTEZ.
Also, Lena, you don't have to use the PTA Easy
it's up
software.
to you how you keep your spreadsheet, how you keep your ledger. A lot of people are using, this system, My PTEZ. It used to be called, now I can't even think of what the old name was, PTA Easy.
Lena,
33rd is using that too, but that's not required. You can keep your ledger however you however you want. Just it has to be very clear what your categories are so that you could go back and report to your association. What did you pay for? What dues did you send out? What was your student welfare programs? How much did you spend in fundraising? How much were your organizational expenses? These are some fairly general categories because these match the tax filings, but some units have more, like you're going to have several fundraisers, or you're going to want to detail out your different organizational expenses. So you can kind of create subcategories. This is a suggestion of what the categories might be for student programs. Again, your officer's expense, any other outside expense that comes up. Student programs would be awards, that type of thing. This is I believe this was created on Excel. You can see the tabs at the bottom. There's one for the treasurer's report. There's a budget tab. This person created a budget to actual. This is the expense ledger. There would be an income ledger too. And this is how they're listing, again, those similar categories that would reflect what you need for your tax reporting purposes. And this is what a ledger might look like in a handwritten form. This is a copy of what I believe the 33rd District Green Ledger book is available for sale. You would have your categories: membership, fundraiser, programs, donations. And depending on your activity, you may be able to get 1 month of activity on each page. You may have to roll into 2 pages, but you want to help you keep your books in order. There's a place at the bottom that helps you keep what your balance on hand is. You would start with July 1st, what your receipts are for that month, what your disbursements were, and what your ending balance is on hand, and that should equal your checkbook. This is an electronic version on, looks like Excel for the income. And then this is the unit annual treasurer's report. This is last year's form, the one that we have distributed to the councils and hopefully councils to the units, but I know is on our website. We have the July, oh, this is the right one. This is the one that has totem. Yes, it does. Okay. I had made a note to myself to double check. So this is the correct form. There is question right now as to, is this a mandate for the units to use this form? We're going to get clarification from CAPTA, because CAPTA has a form on their website called the Annual Financial Report. We like this one, 33rd has created this one to assist the units in preparing, getting ready for their tax reporting. I know that some units might keep a ledger. Hopefully they balance the ledger to their bank statements, etc. But then they just turn it all over to a tax preparer, and then the tax preparer has to come up with these categories. Well, if you're doing this once your audit is done, you might save yourself some money with your tax preparer, because then they just take this information and move it right over into your tax filings. Or you may have someone like Lisa and Flora that are, in my opinion, experts, and they can just file your taxes based on this information.
I want to say too, Leda, and this applies to the audit also. Can you hear me?
So if you discover that you have made an error in your treasurer's report, well, first, the treasurer's report at the end of the month needs to balance with your bank reconciliation. That is another requirement of the insurance company. Are they reconciling the bank statement every month? So please get in the habit, if you're not already doing that at your unit, to make sure your bank statement is reconciled every month. There is a section on, at 33rd, I have the auditor review the bank reconciliation, and she signs off on it too. So you might want to get into that habit. When they're reviewing the bank statement, they review the bank reconciliation as well. If you find that there's an error, and I have made several, I forgot to enter a check that I wrote the very last day of the month. Then at the next executive board meeting or association meeting, you distribute the corrected report. You state what the correct information is. You request a note be made in the minutes that the prior report was prepared incorrectly, and that you read what the new correct report should be. And then those are filed with the secretary. Okay, what you want to watch for. Watch for stale dated checks. As I think I mentioned last night, one of the things that pops out in audits are checks that they just forgot had never cleared. And so you couldn't figure out what it is. Why is it out of balance? Oh, well, there's that $25 check that was written, last fall, and we totally forgot about it. So that tells you, one, you're not reconciling your bank account every month. And two, it's a suggestion you don't let your stale dated checks get older than 6 months old. You might want to then discuss with the payee about, did you lose it, whatever, how you have to try to get a hold of them. This happened to me last year. I found that there was a check that was outstanding in the bank account for several months. And all we had to do was contact the payee, and there it was sitting in his in basket. He had totally forgotten to take it to the bank. So those kinds of things happen. You want to review your policy with NSF checks, how you're taking care of those, who's going to be contacting the maker of the check to collect. It can be a little sensitive, so you want to make sure that information doesn't get shared outside of the board. If a person has given you an NSF check, so review that as a board, what your policy is going to be. It's usually the treasurer that attempts to collect the monies. The next, I'm not quite certain which report contains the bank interest. Someone else help me with this slide. So I'm not quite certain.
This was on mine too.
The intent was with that statement.
It was either treasurer's report or financial secretary.
E-commerce account, you have to do a report on the e-commerce account as well as your checking account. Flora? Oh.
The question is come up about insurance companies. Did they offer a list of qualified CP? Well,
nope. We've lost.
Muted. No.
Oh, we've lost audio on Flora. Sorry.
Oh.
There you are. You're back.
Oh, I'm back. Okay. So with regard to engaging a tax accountant or someone to do your audit, we do not recommend anyone, but I would say to get at the very least some kind of service contract or some kind of form that will demonstrate or show the scope of work, the amount, and turnaround time. Insurance companies, CPAs may want to do an audit in accordance with GAAP. That is way expensive. You do not need that. You have to show them, if you do want to engage an accountant to do your auditing, make sure they stay within the scope of the audit checklist. They do not need to go beyond that. And even for your taxes, I would say get some kind of form saying what you expect from them. And then there were some other questions. Oh, audit review committee members must be association members. Okay, so I just wanted to get that in about engaging accountants and accounting firms, because they could be a little predatory. We cannot tell you who to use or anything like that, but just be aware.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, I'm always learning something new, and I just learned this, that it is a requirement from the IRS for non-profit organizations to present a budget versus actual report quarterly to your association. So I generally, would have prepared one or two throughout the year, but now they're asking, again, in the spirit of transparency, they would like to see nonprofits report quarterly to the association of where you stand with your money coming in and going out. As it also applies against your budget. What was your plan? I had circled an item regarding budget, so I'll go back to that item. We talked last night about when is the best time to create your budget, but one of the things we tend to catch ourselves chasing our tail is budgets. And budgets are created once a board has established their goals. So their budgets are created to support the goals that the board of directors set. And especially in the time of COVID right now, a board may find that all they're going to do this year is help better communicate issues between the school and the home. And that may not necessarily cost any money. And now you're looking at how much money last year's association had, and you may not have to raise a single dollar this year to meet your budget requirements. So look at that. Again, we are not the fundraising arm of the school district. So you want to make sure that your budget reflects what your goals are for your board. And we're about 15 minutes ahead of schedule, Lisa. Do we have any other questions that we need to address right now?
Actually, there was one that says, why do we need hard copies if we have documents in the cloud, like a Google or some other version?
I don't know that answer.
Johnson,
because we'll get that clarification from state. Who knows how forever the cloud is.
Yeah, if you have reports, so that was another thing I was going to mention. The document, what do you call that, from PTA Easy? It's the document
management
program.
system.
Yes. You don't have to be using the financial software to submit your documents to that program. That's kind of a free program that that PTA Easy offered to CAPTA. And so your documents may be uploaded to that document system that's with PTA Easy also.
Great. So we will get an answer back about that for sure. Any other questions?
Someone just popped up with, regarding the budget, can you please clarify what are unallocated reserve funds?
Lisa or Flora, or shall I?
Yeah, sure. Unallocated funds, ordinarily that's your reserve. You want to, for example, you need startup cash for the next year. You may not have a fundraiser at the beginning of the year, and you may have to pay for a product like spiritware. You have to have an inventory of spiritware, so you have to make that purchase, but you're not going to sell it until later for your first event. So an unallocated reserve is monies that should be, and it's a balance brought forward, monies that should be retained for purchases in the next year, like startup cash. As far as carrying a cash balance, it's recommended that it not be more than, I think, twice of your operating budget. So you don't want to be this, gigantic, machine of money. So it's recommended that you have at least 10% of your operating budget carried forward, but not more than twice of your operating budget ordinarily. So if you have an operating budget of like 75,000, then you shouldn't be carrying forward more than 150. We've never seen the IRS, question that with anybody, but that's not to say that they won't.
Yeah, I think that in the state training, the state treasurer suggests 10% carryover and no more than 2 years of your annual expenses. Those are nonprofit guidelines. CAPTA is also suggesting no more than 50% in normal times, and understanding that there may have been a lot of money from last year that got rolled forward into this year. It is up to this year's board on how those monies are to be spent. I am hearing that some boards or associations before the end of the term had decided how those funds were to be spent. And so you need to work with those minutes to understand what those, and then therefore those are not unallocated or reserves. Those are kind of what's the correct word? Identified as to how they're to be spent.
Also, with your gifts to the school district, and I know I can only speak for Long Beach because I have a unit in I'm connected to Long Beach, and there was a question, not on this particular one, but what if you paid gifts to the school district on behalf of your school for like field trips that never happened, and so that money was not expended for the buses and it's sitting there, and they said that the money is not going anywhere, and that as far as Long Beach is concerned, and you check with your school district, but as far as they are concerned, you can leave it, we can leave it in the account. You have your association, your board and association meetings, you approve your budget, and if the budget says that money should not be field trips but student planners, then you can submit an amended fiduciary agreement, and they will flag that money for whatever you want it to be for the current year. And it doesn't need to be approved at the school board again or anything like that.
After government filings, there's a little piece to discuss about fiduciary agreements.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions in the chat?
I am not looking at the chat because I'm all geared to go. So
okay.
Oh.
All right. Flora, do you see anything?
Oh, it's the school sense one that
Oh.
Joe was telling us about.
Okay, so somebody asked about how one participates in the School Sense program. And I know about School Sense when my kids were back in elementary school, where we collect the box tops from, the shopping mall. And then we had, mom sitting there tabulating the totals and stapling on them. And then somebody had to go to the mall and stand in line and turn in their receipts. And, top collectors of receipts got a certain percentage of money back, whatever. I guess there is a new program that we're going to be looking at. Somebody asked about it and how PTA can participate in that. And this has to do with the Cerritos Auto Mall. So we'll be getting more information about that at another time.
And also someone saying, and it's very true, thank you, that you should try to find a tax preparer that is familiar with nonprofits.
Yes, highly recommended, highly recommended. Okay, any other questions that come in, we'll wrap them into the end of Lisa's presentation. And Lisa's gonna start talking about government filings. And I will run run our little slides here.
okay. Yesterday, we had done a poll in the beginning finance presentation, and one of the questions was, do tax and government filings make you nervous? And a majority of you answered yes. So I'm just going to say that you have support in PTA, and that if doing filings makes you nervous, you should actually consider the alternative, because not doing filings can actually have pretty serious consequences for your PTA. So not doing filings should actually make you more nervous. And Lena, can you scooch forward, I think it's a few slides, to the one titled Taxes, Charitable Trust Number. Yes, this one.
This one?
Yes. Okay, so all PTAs and actually all nonprofit organizations need to file federal tax returns and state tax returns. And so those are due for everyone in 33rd District. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th. So the date that the filings are due to the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board is November 15th. Now, I'm going to say, don't wait until November to start working on it. You should probably just make sure it gets done during the summer so that you don't have it hanging over your head once the school year starts. And make sure you turn in copies to your council. Each council may have preferences as to whether they want hard copies or electronic copies, but they end up actually forwarding them on up to us. So that way we can make sure that everyone is caught up and that their nonprofit status won't be revoked. And since I've said revoked, I'm going to go back to if your PTA does not file their federal tax return for 3 consecutive years, then the nonprofit status can be revoked. And then you would no longer be a PTA, you're no longer a nonprofit, and you cannot operate as a PTA. And then in order to get that nonprofit status back, it is a big pain, a much bigger pain than doing your filings in the first place. It involves stuff like, years and years of financial paperwork, and then a large fee to the IRS. Last I heard it was like $850. That could be different now. You just make sure that you work on that. And in a future slide, we'll tell you where you can go for a little bit of information.
Lisa,
yeah.
we want to remind everybody that I believe the Board of Managers did vote, well, I think it might have been last year, that should a unit get their nonprofit status revoked by the IRS, their charter will be pulled, and it used to be that they could go through all the process of preparing all, the return and all that, paying the $800 or whatever, but I believe that they will not be brought back. So okay. We'll get that clarified, but it's a lot more serious than, oh, well, somebody else can put, no, please make sure we file. That's one of our requirements for being a PTA, is make sure we're doing our tax reporting.
Right, thank you. And then in addition to your federal tax return and state tax return, every PTA should have a charitable trust number. And so every year you're going to do an RRF1 form. And then that is also due at the same time that your tax filings are due.
And Lisa, I just want to say the Department of Justice with the RF1 and the CTTR1, they're very upset with 501c3s, and so they're really throwing it down. And they're not in the business of slamming PTAs. So we need to do our work, but it's really for the benefit of those large 501c3s that are taking advantage of the taxing system or whatever. But we need to file our forms, as Lisa said, but
All righty. Lena, can you go back one slide? I think that's
this one.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So This is a very useful webpage on capta.org. So it's got all of your basic information that you need as far as what you need to file, when you need to file. It's got links to the forms. This introduction tab, there's actually a link. When you click on that tab, there's a link that has just sort of basic filing guidelines. It'll explain that if your gross receipts are normally less than 50,000, then you can just file the 990N, which is an e-postcard. It's very simple, straightforward, and there's no reason to put it off. If you know that you've made less than 50,000 for this last fiscal year, then just go ahead and do it. Get it out of the way. And then same thing with the state tax returns. If you make under 50,000, then again, it's a simple e-postcard. You just go online and answer a few questions, and then you're done. Really, if you know what your gross receipts are for the past year, it really takes like 5 minutes to do both the federal and the state tax returns for under 50,000. If you make over 50,000, it's more complicated, and it's a paper form. And if you wanted to take a look, if you're curious, you can actually go and click on the Forms tab, and it has links to all of the various forms of 990, EZ, for if you make over 50,000 a year. Actually, there's also a 990 if you make over 200,000 a year, or you have assets of, I believe, over 500,000. Is that right? And let's see. It actually has a definition of what gross receipts are. And so gross receipts are pretty much basically everything that comes in except for the portion of membership dues that you pass on to your council, and also any free will offering that you collect that you pass on forward. And this is for units. If you happen to be at a council, then it's kind of the same thing. Any portion of memberships that you pass on to district, that is not considered part of your gross receipts. Any free will offerings that you're passing on up through district, that is not part of your gross receipts. For councils, it's a little more complicated because often units are submitting registration fees for trainings and that kind of thing. So anything that just kind of passes on through you to the higher level, then that's not considered part of your gross receipts. Okay.
Lisa, a question that the same question we got last night is if we properly made less than 50,000 for this year, can we do a postcard? And our answer was that, first of all, you need to consult a tax accountant. We are not tax accountants, but
Right.
just so you know, it's the $50,000 over the last 3 years. So if you made 80,000 the last couple of years, that's 160,000. You're already over the 50,000 per the last 3 years, including this year. So you'd have to file a 990 EC. But there is a 3-year rule that receipts can't be more than $50,000 for the current year and the last 2 years average.
That's correct. And then I think it goes the other way. If you're normally at, say, 40,000 a year, and then 1 year you spike up to 51,000,
yeah,
then you're normally under, and that's even though you made more than 50,000, then you qualify as under 50,000 according to that rule. Okay, so that introduction tab is very useful. Let's see. Also, one thing before I forget, if you have to file the 990 EZ and the 990, you also have to file, there's a Schedule A that goes along with that. So don't just do the 990 EZ and think you're done. Make sure that you do all the schedules that are required of you. Everyone has to do that Schedule A if they do the 990 EZ or the 990. There's also usually a Schedule O where some miscellaneous information ends up going on there, but the form actually will tell you when you need to use those schedules. And then at that same tab on the CAPTA website, there's that difference between, for state filings, if you make under 50,000, it's 199N. If you make over, then it's the paper form 199. And so again, it's more complicated. And we don't expect PTA volunteers who volunteer to be treasurers to know how to fill out all these tax forms, because, you know.
Because I'm one.
So you can actually go and have a tax preparer, an accountant, prepare your tax forms. You just need to make sure, like has been said before, that they are familiar with filing for nonprofits, because I've seen some forms done by preparers and they'll check off crazy things like the PTA is a school, and no, the PTA is not a school. So you should maybe ask for references, maybe just kind of quiz them a little bit just to make sure that they know what they're talking
and
about.
we want the treasurers to know that it's not your responsibility to do the taxes, but it is under your assignment to make sure that they are done. But all of the board needs to make sure the taxes are done. So it's not just falls on the shoulder of the treasurer. The whole board needs to understand, and stay on top of, have we gotten our taxes done? What can I do to help get this done? Can I help you research who's going to do our taxes? That type of thing. So it just doesn't fall on the shoulders of the treasurer.
Right. And then you also need to complete the RRF1 form. And then new for this year.
Do you want me to go to those? I can't remember.
Yeah, oh, you have it on there. Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay, let me see. This,
yes.
Which one is first?
Let's do the RRF1.
Okay.
Because,
Whoops.
Oops. Wrong way.
There it is. Okay.
Okay. So the RRF1 is actually has been updated since the last time we had to fill one out.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this one is new for this year, the 2019-2020 year. So if you're working on your government filings, make sure that you use this version and not the old version that you might be familiar with.
Yes, I think I'm hearing that they will not accept the old form.
Right, not for this past.
This current, yes, for this new current filing, they will not take last year's form.
If for some reason you are behind and say you hadn't done 2018-19, then yeah, go ahead and use the older form. But for this past year that just ended, then make sure you're using this form. And those nice folks at California State PTA, on their website, they have this annotated form here with little hints as far as what some of the questions mean, what you need to fill in on the spaces. So yeah, make sure you take a look at that. And then, in addition to this form being new, there is the CTTR1.
Yeah, Lisa, can we stay on this one for a minute?
Oh, sure.
I think this is what's getting a lot of our units into some suspension with the Attorney General's office and then ultimately the Franchise Tax Board, is they're failing to attach their tax return, right?
Right.
So make sure, yeah, go ahead.
Yes. So for prior years, if you filed the 990 EZ or the 990, then you needed to be sending that along with the RRF1 form, along with any other schedules like Schedule A or Schedule
Yeah,
O.
not just the cover page or the first 2 pages, the whole return. And we're finding that our units are in some trouble because they forgot to do that. And then it's a generally simple resolution. But
and in previous years, if you file the 990N, that's you didn't need to worry about that. But new for this year,
brand new,
that if you are filing the e-postcard, the 990N, there's a new form that you need to fill out to go along with the RRF1 form. So it's the CTTR1. And so there's, a little bit of a breakdown of your expenses and your revenue. So I'm thinking that the UTAR, I don't know if the categories kind of fall along the lines.
It does.
Some of them are.
Some of them, yeah. There's a little like, does not going to have investments, but special events, yes. We don't. It's not going to have your cash contributions or your non-cash contributions.
Right.
I've done a little conversion table between the UTAR and the CTTR1, and it's a little bit different, but it's pretty easy. The important thing is that program expenses are under other expenses, while program revenue is under program revenue. So that's a big difference. But they're asking for random stuff like supplies and postage. It's just for the office, really. Not so important. And then the insurance is what you pay to the council for your regular insurance, which includes your regular insurance and workers' comp.
So there are some units that need to pay the additional surcharge on workers' comp, and that would go there on that line item too. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and also, well, I'm sorry, Lisa, but we want to make sure that for anything that's reported as, and this may be missed, anything reported as other revenue and other expense has to have a supporting schedule showing what that is exactly, and that would be your budget line items.
Okay.
And then fortunately, this annotated form is also available on capta.org. So this is a brand new form. We're all new to it. So we're kind of learning as we go along too. So I suspect we don't have answers to all of the questions, but I think the AG's office is going to have to expect that people are just going to do their best. and at the California State PTA training, they were kind of saying that they're expecting people to be turning in all kinds of crazy stuff, and that the AG's office, they're not sure what to expect in how people are going to fill out this form. So and then, I mean, part of this stuff is like non-cash donations. And if you haven't been keeping track of that this year, because, well, you just found out about this reporting requirement maybe now, just do your best.
Yes.
The AG's office is pretty good about, well, if you do your best, as long as you're making a good faith effort, then I think we're good. And then just going forward, then you'll be tracking some of this stuff in the future.
Okay. Where would you like me to go to next?
That is a good question. I guess backwards.
Okay. I can do
to
that.
The tax. Yes, this
tax
one.
search.
Tax search. So you may be curious as far as, did we even file for 2018-19? Or did we file our federal, or did we file our RRF1 for prior years? So on this slide, and then there's a slide a few pages forward. I think these slides got a little bit mixed up. Oop,
No, it's the beginning.
yeah. So
this one.
this slide, and then I think 3 or 4. Oh, after that.
Oh, this was about, we wanted to talk about, that
Okay.
you can, if you do file the RRF1 electronically, that you do need to upload a copy of the completed CRT, the CTTR1.
Or your
Yeah.
990Z.
Okay, so
Okay,
tax
so there,
research,
and
here we
so
go. Oh, they
there's
did get mixed
the
up.
other one. Yeah, yeah.
I know how they got mixed up.
So if you're not sure whether your PTA has been filing regularly, then you can at least look up your federal tax returns and your RRF1s to see whether you're current or not. Unfortunately, for state tax returns, there's no way to look that stuff up online. I find as a rule of thumb, if a unit hasn't filed their federal tax return for a year, they probably haven't done their state tax return. So, and this is actually kind of useful because you do want to make sure that you are on top of it. And it's a good idea to, if you don't know whether your PTA has been filing in prior years, go ahead and take a look and see what you can find. If you're not finding anything and you're concerned, then please go ahead and contact us. Our contact information is at the beginning of this presentation. And I guess another thing I should say is that if you receive any letters from either the IRS or the Franchise Tax Board or the Registry of Charitable Trusts, don't ignore them.
Mhm.
They, that's not going to make matters any better. It's not going to make things go away. If you're getting any correspondence, then if you can go ahead and maybe scan that and email that to my address. Also, California State PTA has an excellent filings person, and so you can maybe even loop her in, and she's at taxinfo@capta.org. So hopefully between the two of us, then we can help figure out where exactly you are and what needs to be done to get you current. Okay.
Okay. So we skipped raffles.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that's raffle. Okay. Yeah, so raffles. If you are planning on holding a raffle, although I'm not sure what kind of events people are going to be having in COVID times, but theoretically, if you're planning on having a raffle, then you actually need to be registering for the permission to hold raffles. Now, basically, a raffle is something where people pay money for a chance at winning a prize. So what you can do is, I don't have the website on here.
But you could Google Registry of Charitable Trusts. This does give the form. I think that the first line, the term is wrong. Raffle registration is not September 1st. It's the raffle period. Once you get your permit, the raffle permit time is September 1st to August 30th. But you would conduct your request a permit with using that file form with the Registry of Charitable Trust, at least 60 days. Give them time, because you don't want to, let's say you're going to do some online silent auction or whatever. I'm just making this up. And you're going to do it the beginning of August, and you just go ahead and send in your application now. It's not going to happen. The dates are a little off, but what we're saying is give yourself plenty of time to make sure before you hold your raffle, you have your permit in hand.
And just to clarify that actually a silent auction this is not the same as a raffle.
Yes.
So I
Yes,
don't want
that's
people
true.
to get confused. But there is a fee. It's $20, but that will cover as many raffles as you care to have during that raffle period of September 1st through August 30th. And a part 2 of that paperwork is by October 1st, following that raffle period, then you need to file a report that just indicates the dates of the raffles that you had, and also there's some basic information as far as how whether you spent at least 90% of your proceeds on your programs. And that's actually one of the requirements in order to be allowed to hold raffles, is that 90% of your proceeds from your selling your raffle tickets needs to go towards your programs, and no more than 10% can be expenses for your raffle. So you maybe need to work on getting your prizes donated, see if you can hold your printing costs to a minimum, that kind of thing.
And you don't have, therefore, you are not allowed to have 50-50 raffles.
That was what I was going to say.
Okay.
50-50s.
Jack ripped it right out of your lips.
Yes. 50-50s are illegal. We're not supposed to have them. If you're not sure what a 50-50 is, it's basically where you sell raffle tickets and the prize, and whoever gets the winning ticket receives half of those proceeds from selling those raffle tickets. Now, we don't expect you to go around and being the 50-50 raffle police if some other organizations are.
To emphasize that 90-10 rule, they take it very seriously. You want to make sure that you don't report more than 10%, because I've seen the letter that's gone out where a unit did report more expense than it should have, and it was from the Attorney General's office, and they said, we assume you didn't know the rule, but next time we're going to refer this matter to the Attorney General. So if you think those letters are scary from the IRS and the Franchise Tax Board, that one is really scary, and they don't mean it and stuff, but it's just to emphasize.
Right. And so on that site that has these forms, there is a very good frequently asked questions section. So make sure you read that, and then I think you'll come up with a better understanding, a clearer understanding of what the requirements are and what you need to do in order to stay on the good side of the Attorney General's office.
I wanted to add that even if you did not hold a raffle this year, like 33rd did not hold their raffle, I still need to submit my raffle report that said we held no raffle.
Right. Yes. So if you registered, but you were not able to hold any raffles during this period, then yes, you do need to respond. Otherwise, it's just a loose end for them, and they're going to be wondering, hey, did you hold a raffle?
Yeah.
Why aren't you telling us? Speak to us. So,
okay.
Yes.
And did we take care of all your slides? I apologize. They went out of order when I plugged in those RF1 and the CTTR1, and that's why they went out of order. Okay.
No, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So good financial practices. Make sure that all checks are using permanent ink so that you don't have your checks being washed and somebody else writing a check on your account. Regarding the fiduciary agreement, all gifts to the school district should have a signed fiduciary agreement. You want to work with your school district to make sure that is done. And you can speak to your school district, you can request in your agreement that the school district give you periodic reporting for how the gifted money is being used. Units should be sending a copy of their association minutes to the council. Council needs to review the minutes and look for, are the financial reports being read at the meetings? Are the motions being made to approve the budget? Motions did they release budgeted funds? Are there motions to approve and or ratify checks? And now there are motions to adopt the audits. Here is a sample, again, on the form site, CAPTA website, the form section for a fiduciary agreement. And miscellaneous. So we talked a little bit about, well, we didn't get to this part, but some vendors may ask you for a letter stating your tax exempt status. You would write, the president or the treasurer would write to taxinfo@capta.org or LOD, letter of determination, at capta.org. And the wonderful person at that desk, her name is Donna Broussard. She's our tax filing expert as well. She will send you back, the president back, a letter that states your unit is in good standing, but your unit has to be in good standing. So she will double check. Have they paid their memberships? Have they paid their insurance when, are they not delinquent on that? Are they not delinquent? Are they current on all of their tax filings? We did have a situation once where the unit needed one and she popped back and like, oh, you're missing, these years and these years of your tax filings. So those letters of determination will come out if you are in good standing. One suggestion is talk to your finance team about the politics of the audit. Again, that's the recommendation of the auditor, and let them know, what you might have some upsets about, but these are recommendations only about how to handle your accounting better and your record keeping better. Make sure you never, ever deposit other people's monies into your account that are not PTA approved receipts. So a principal says, hey, we've been collecting pennies for leukemia patients. We need an account to deposit them to. No, they don't go in your PTA account unless the PTA decided that they wanted to hold a pennies for leukemia patients. But that probably doesn't really meet, what our mission statement is, because we want to spend monies for our children, the most number of children as possible. And to select one charity to give some monies to may not be the best way to meet that mission. Okay, I again also just learned that IRS does require all nonprofit organizations to have their board members complete a conflict of interest or whistleblower form. So capta.org has that form available. I would suggest the president of every unit make sure that every board member completes one, signs it, and it's either kept by the recording secretary or the treasurer. It's done annually. So now's the time to be collecting those conflict of interest forms. You want to know, if somebody has a t-shirt company that you're potentially going to be using, it's listed in there that, that there's a conflict of interest. That board member would know to, or the president would know to have that board member recuse themselves from that vote. And that compliance of governmental and PTA requirements are an obligation of all the board members. It's not just, this financial person, treasurer that has to make sure that, everything is done according to the governmental or the PTA requirements, that the whole board works together to make sure that you stay in compliance with the regulations, the requirements to continue to be a nonprofit organization. This is a copy of it's a 1943 document that you will get with your letter of determination that originally gave the California Congress of Parents and Teachers their non-exempt status. It's kind of cool that you get that. And these are just a couple of resources for you to know. CAPTA.org and the California State PTA Toolkit is an excellent resource. The insurance guide is an excellent resource, and our website. And then additionally, let's see, I need to have somebody mute. Make sure you're muted. Our website, and then of course our all of our officers, Lisa, Flora, myself, Joe is our financial secretary. We're all here to help you with your questions as they pop up throughout the year. So we are at 8 o'clock. Wow. I don't mind staying on for another, 10 minutes or so if anybody has questions that we didn't address. Flora?
I think I've answered all of the ones in the chat box. So if anybody has any other ones.
Okay. So why? Oh, there we go. I stopped our share. Anybody have any questions that we haven't addressed? We're contemplating maybe holding a like a round table. So we will advise you when we schedule that, as things come up, you actually start getting into the books. If you're new to PTA treasurer, you can ask us questions, but I would first suggest you utilize your counsel. Your counsel should have some excellent financial officers at that level that can help you specifically. But again, we're always here to help you as well. If nobody has any questions, I want to tell you thank you very much for coming. We wish you well on this, in this year. We're all a bunch of square faces.
And also be on the lookout. I believe Cindy will be sending a link to an evaluation form. So if you could answer that, that would be great. Give us any kind of feedback, and at least so that if we're falling short in some way, then let us know so that we can improve. If you think we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, tell us that too.
So Heidi, did you see that question from Heidi?
Yes, and the CTTR1, you can view it as a little itty bitty tax return that the IRS doesn't care about organizations under 50,000, neither does the FTB, but the Department of Justice is cracking down, so they need a little bit more information. So the RF never travels alone anymore. It's either accompanied by a 990EZ, a 990, or a CTTR1.
So Flora, it looks like her question was under assets. Oops, it disappeared. What, I lost it. Under assets, where would we list what they currently have in their checking account?
That would be cash. Ordinarily, PTAs, they have a choice, but most of the time, PTAs are on a cash basis of accounting. But remember, this form is to be used by all the 501c3s in the state of California, and they're on accrual basis of accounting. They could have assets and liabilities. Ordinarily, we do not run a cash basis. So ordinarily, the cash balance would equal your fund balance, and we don't have any liabilities.
Great. And let's see, there was a donated gift offered to new members. No, that's not a raffle. If everybody has an equal chance to receive something, my understanding is that's not a raffle, but we're not going to advise you about what is or is not a raffle. You'll need to seek higher authorities, tax attorney, etc. In fact, that's what the Attorney General's website says. They won't even advise you what's a raffle or not. Any other questions that we're missing? Put your hand up or unmute yourself.
I think you skipped mine accidentally.
Okay.
Can I ask it out loud?
Absolutely.
I'm a council officer, and we have a unit that does not have an auditor as an officer. They took it out of their bylaws because they're a small unit. and we were having a debate amongst ourselves. So in terms of doing their audit, we were trying to figure out between the bylaws and between the insurance requirements. So it looks like they have a choice between I just want to clarify, between using a quote qualified person, that they hire, or if they happen to have a parent volunteer who's qualified, or is it true that they can appoint a committee to do the audit as well of parents that aren't check signers, that are just from the PTA? Are we correct on that?
Yes, I think I answered that, but I might have missed it. The audit can be done by a committee, but one person has to sign it and sort of lead the committee, and they would sign it as the auditor. So you may want to use a committee and you all work together and look at it if you feel that, one person doesn't want to be responsible, but one person has to sign it and present it.
And so it's okay if none of those people are even on the exec board.
As long as they're association members.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody? Don't be shy. Well, if there's not, I'll say thank you for attending. Keep us in the loop.
You.
Keep, send your questions forward, and we'll see you at the next time we get together. Thank you all for your time.
Come
Don't forget.
tomorrow night, the auditor training,
Yes.
6:30. Be there, be square.
Alrighty. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Want to stop recording?
Oh, yes, thank you. Stop.